Good morning, Room 5 superstars. Happy Monday. We have not read this book in a few days, and I did that on purpose because I really want you to help me retell this story. What was the title of this story? Sophie's Squash. What was the problem in this story? So when you answer me, try to answer me by saying the problem was. That way it will be a complete sentence. So the problem was Sophie had a squash that she treated like a baby doll, and her parents wanted her to get rid of it. So now that we know what was the problem, now can you tell me what was the solution? So again, with the complete sentence, you'll say, the solution was. How did they solve that problem? The solution was she got some help. Her parents helped her, the farmer helped her, and she buried Sophie. And what happened then? She didn't bury Sophie. I always do this. She buried Bernice, the squash, and Bernice grew 2 babies. Okay, let's look again. Sophie's squash. One bright fall day, Sophie chose you fill it in, squash at a farmer's market. Her parents planned to serve it for not dinner, supper, but Sophie had other ideas. It was just the right size to hold in her arms, just the right size to bounce on her knee, just the right size to love. I'm glad we met, Sophie whispered. Good friends are hard to find. At home, Sophie used markers to give her squash a face. She wrapped it in a blanket and rocked it to sleep. What happens on this page? Sophie looks very concerned, and her mom was going to make what for dinner? Squash. Instead, she called for a pizza. She knew Sophie would be so upset. And after that, Bernice went everywhere with Sophie. To story time at the library, to visit other squash at the farmer's market. And what do they practice here? Somersaults, right? Every night, Sophie gave Bernice a bottle, a hug, and a kiss. Well, we did hope she'd love vegetables, Sophie mother told her father. Shh, Sophie said. Bernice is sleeping. Sweet pea, Sophie's mother said one morning as they made blueberry waffles. Bernice is a squash, not a friend. If we don't eat her soon, she'll get, what will she get? Mushy and gross. And what did her mom want to bake her with? Marshmallows. She was not happy about that. Don't listen, Bernice, Sophie cried. And then what is Sophie's dad doing here? Can you tell me the story? Sophie's dad takes her shopping. Did she like the trucks? No, too hard. Did she like the dolls? No, too soft. Sophie clutched Bernice tightly and said, I have everything I need. Why did Sophie's dad want her to pick a different toy? What do you think? He thought that a squash was not a toy and she might get mushy and gross. After supper, Sophie's parents called a family meeting. Bernice napped in Sophie's lap. Why don't we donate Bernice to the food pantry before she rots? Her father suggested. Do you think that Bernice will last forever? Probably not, right? She's a squash. So how are we different how are what we need to survive different? How is what we need to survive different from what a squash needs to survive? Because she's treating her like a baby human. And down here she said, Sophie shook her head, Bernice will last forever. But she's not a baby human. Giving her a bottle and rocking her and wrapping her in a blanket, that's not what squash need to survive, right? Their needs are different. Bernice seems a little blotchy, said Sophie's dad on the way to the library. She looks perfect to me. What are the kids saying here? What's that spotty thing? They're kind of being a little mean, a little rude. She tells them it's a squash with freckles. And then what does Mom say here? Maybe Bernice should stay home next time. Still, as winter neared, Sophie noticed changes. Bernice seemed softer, and her somersaults lacked their usual style. Visiting friends will cheer you up, Sophie said. So she takes her to visit other squash friends, and what does she ask this man selling the squash? She asks him how to keep squash healthy, right? And after that, Sophie got an idea to do what with Bernice? Right, she's going to put her in the ground. And after she did, she whispered, "Get better soon." While Sophie slept, the wind whistled and tiny snowflakes fell. When she awoke, the world was covered in white. Do you think Bernice is cold out there? Sophie asked her mother. I'm sure she's warm and cozy under her snow blanket, her mother replied. What makes you feel cozy? Last week when I talked to Waylon, he had cozy pajamas and a cozy blanket. I feel cozy with my blanket too. Sophie gazed out the window all morning. She was still there in the afternoon when her father came home with a surprise. You need a new friend, he said. Meet Ace. Ace was nice but boring. He just swam around and around in his bowl. But during the long winter, Sophie discovered that Ace was a superb silent reader who did fabulous flips. And he always listened when Sophie talked about who? Bernice. When the snow finally melted, Sophie rushed to the garden and saw a small green sprout that looked strangely familiar, right? Bernice, Sophie said, how was your winter? After that, Sophie, Ace, and Bernice ate lunch together every day. One bright summer morning, Sophie somersaulted across her yard, landed by the garden, and what? Stared in disbelief. Bernice had grown 2 tiny squash. Wow, Sophie told them. You look just like your mom. Soon Bonnie and Baxter were just the right size for Sophie to hold in her arms and bounce on her knee. Just the right size to love.